Good kids, good staff, bad staff. Sounds simple, but it's a trap. Because the moment we decide someone is good or bad, we stop looking for the truth and we start looking for evidence to prove ourselves right. If you are caring for someone else, whether paid or unpaid, and no matter how many hours you do it, did you realise that you may be missing out on thousands of pounds of discounts for things that you may use every day? The Able to Care podcast is proud to be sponsored by the UK's #1 carers card. Started by two best friends who recognise that carers deserve better and are 100% committed to helping to change the lives of all carers and bringing them together as a strong community. Carers Card UK provides support, recognition and rewards. It offers reassurance by providing an ID card that helps access emergency information when needed, while also unlocking discounts, a wellbeing hub, a carers circle tool and a community through their app. All of this for less than the price of a box of chocolates a year. There are discounts on gym membership, days out, electrical goods, clothing and even glasses. Let others know you care while taking a little care of yourself with an ID card you can be proud of. Visit carerscarduk.co.uk/promo code/able to care today to order yours. Hello and welcome to the Able to Care podcast. I'm your host, Andy Baker, and today we're tackling a sneaky mindset problem that is actually one of my bugbears that I encounter quite regularly in numerous environments. It shows up in care, education, and even our personal lives. It's the good or bad filter that many of us work off. It feels neat and tidy, and there is certain things and dogmas and kind of principles that have kind of set this, the good versus evil principle that many of us have within numerous tales and stories throughout time, throughout space. Humans like to work in these very simple categorical ways of there is good and there is bad. There is light, there is dark. But even light and dark, it is a spectrum. It isn't just light and dark. You can see all the colors between black and white and everything in between. Everything is a spectrum, but humans learn through categorization. But the danger is we fall into a trap. And it's one of my bugbears because I often hear people talking about good kids, good person, bad person. We like our heroes, we like our villains, but in reality, we're all both, depending on the moment, the context and the stress that we're under. Also, depending on chance sometimes of whether we're perceived to be good or bad. When we label people good or bad, we don't just oversimplify them. We also change how we see their behavior, how we respond to them, and whether they get the support that they actually need. It causes prejudice, it causes stigmatization, it creates blame and shame cultures. And for many out there, if you've caught somebody, whether it be in a staff room, in the teacher's lounge, wherever it is, and they're talking about this natty poo work, this bad kid, this naughty kid, or anything like that, needs changing, needs correcting. That person is going to be damaging the culture of the organization, and it's not good enough. So today I'm going to walk you through the psychology behind it, because I don't judge them as bad or good for doing it. They need to learn. I do not attribute to malice what can be attributed to ignorance, but ignorance will only get you so far. If I'm working in an environment where I'm caring for people and I should be able to understand them and understand people better, ignorance is only going to get me past the first couple of months because then I should be doing better. I should be learning, should be expanding my views. So I'm going to be exposing the psychology behind why we do this, but also how it damages relationships and behavioral outcomes. It affects a person being able to become more. How to replace judgment with curiosity we'll also cover. Labeling somebody as good or bad creates what psychologists call a confirmation bias. We see what we expect to see. If we label a person as bad, we'll notice all the bad things they do. If we notice a child or behavior, a person as being difficult, we'll always notice the times that are difficult, not where they're not. And there's a few principles of this. One is this confirmation bias, the availability bias. We notice it more. When I buy a new car and suddenly I start to notice that same make and model on the road all over the place, it's not because there's more of them, it's because I'm noticing them. So if I'm talking about the bad behavior as a person or nasty behavior of a person, I'm going to notice that more and more and more. We've also got what we call fundamental attribution error. Now, fundamental attribution error is a social principle. It describes how we attribute the behavior of others to their personality, but the behavior of ourselves to social environmental factors. So the reason that they made that mistake is because they're selfish, but the reason we made that same mistake is because we were stressed. The reason that I had to pull in front of that person in traffic is because I just caught myself in the wrong lane. I was panicking a little bit. I didn't realize how close they were. I just didn't mean to. But the reason I reckon they pulled in front of me in traffic is because they just didn't care about other people on the roads and just in a rush and just trying to, just arrogant. That perception we have, the way we make excuses for ourselves, but we don't allow anybody else excuses, is detrimental to the way that we perceive the world and the way we connect with others. Now, some of you may have also heard of a form of cognitive bias called halo and horn effect. And halo and horn effect is where we make a preconceived judgment on a person based on how we immediately perceive them. So there is a principle that good-looking or stereotypically good-looking people are often assumed to be more intelligent and more honest, whereas people who have some form of facial deformity or disfigurement are often assumed to be lower in intelligence and less honest. Now, that is fundamentally flawed error of thinking. But we have to be aware that it's often unconscious. We're not realizing we're doing it. And you say, I don't do that. You have no idea what you do and don't do as far as prejudicial thinking is concerned. But once we decide that somebody is good, we often prove ourselves right by overlooking their mistakes and attributing it to circumstantial things, whereas I know they're really good. But when we decide that somebody's bad, even if their actions are good, they get reconceived or reperceived as suspect, as that was just chance. They just happened to get away with that, or that's not what they really wanted. We change our whole perspective based on this view that we have, this context we have of this person. When we're viewing behavior through a moral lens, instead of a needs lens, we stop ourselves from asking about what happened to you as well. We so often kind of attribute people's behavior, they're good or bad, or going, they chose to do that, rather than what led them to feel that's the right behavior to act on, the right way to meet their needs, the right way to interact with others. Every behavior that we encounter, no matter how negative we think it is, must provide a benefit for the person. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it. Now, many behaviors we may see as reprehensible or dangerous or unacceptable. And that doesn't mean that any person's behavior is suddenly acceptable. But it also means that good people are capable of doing bad things and bad people are capable of good things. It isn't a fixed state. That doesn't mean that if a person behaves very badly or does very bad things, that there shouldn't be necessary consequences, or that a person, maybe has to be removed from society as far as them not being safe to be around other people. But we're judging the behavior. The person is different from the behavior. So we need to be mindful of our own labels. Catch yourself in those good and bad thinking terms, that black and white thinking. It's very limited. Replace it with descriptive, neutral language. Instead of he's aggressive, say he shouted when I told him to stop playing. Instead of say she's a nasty piece of work, she seems to struggle when people are fussing over her doing personal care. Be specific of when she is that. She's just grumpy. She doesn't often seem happy in the mornings. Be specific as far as those behaviors are concerned. Secondly, ask context questions. What might have led to that? What's wrong for them? What are they feeling in this moment? Or what might have happened in the past that could be presenting in the present? They're the three questions when we're going into our 6-stage target model. It's in my book and my training system. We look at that, the being a better detective rather than the judge. There's 3 questions. What's wrong for them? What are they feeling right now? And what might have happened in the past that could be presenting in the present? Also, always put in that the benefit behind the behavior lens. Every behavior has a benefit. So is it survival? Is it communication? Is it regulation? It's the only way they know how to cope with their anger or their emotions. Is it a control thing? They're trying to make themselves feel safe by some form of control. Find that, and you can change how you see the person. You recognize that they've just picked the wrong tool rather than them being bad. And give a balance sheet. Sometimes it's so easy to only acknowledge the negative attributes or behaviors that a person demonstrates. If you've got a staff team, rather than when do we fill in incident reports? When somebody does something wrong, when something goes badly, when somebody acts out, where a staff member gets hurt or spoken rudely, whatever it is, we always write down the negative. But how often we're recording the positive? The pleasant little moments, the uses of nice manners, if that's something we appreciate, so any signs of respect or kindness, just something, an element of play or connection. It could be as simple as, hey, I was just in the kitchen, I was doing the washing up, and this person just came over and just stood next to me for a bit, going, what are you doing? That may be it. But hey, that was more positive than coming over and hurting you, hitting you, shouting at you, screaming at you. So acknowledge it, appreciate it. One of the principles within my target system is that the behavior that we track, acknowledge, and then role model and reinforce is what we're going to get. So if we're noticing when somebody is rude and bad, when we're acknowledging it, hey, don't be rude, and then we're maybe shouting at them not to be rude, then that's what we're going to get. If instead we're noticing when they're kind, when they're thoughtful, we're role modeling that ourselves, we're reinforcing it and appreciating it, and we're acknowledging it when they do it, we're more likely to get it. So try and make sure you're logging down, not just, and it could be in your diary, it could be in your gratitude journal at the end of the day. It could be in your daily logs, or it could be in your incident reports. How often do you have a positive incident? There was one school I actually worked with. They started doing, they had pink slips and stuff for negative behaviors. But some of the teachers, we encouraged them, start giving pink slips for good. So I'll give them hey, thank you so much for your attention in the lesson today. It was really enjoyable to teach you. Making sure there's just an acknowledgement. You may go, well, they should sit there. Spoken about this before, shouldn't statements. If you need to reward and appreciate the things, like how often, think about in relationships, how often you just want to be appreciated for what you do, not only criticized for what you don't do. So all of the things that people just learn to just take for granted and have the expectations, well, you should do that. But if you get appreciated, if it gets acknowledged, you're more likely to want to do it because you feel it's worthwhile, it's being noticed. Whereas sometimes when it isn't noticed, what's the point? So I've had disagreements with some people who do it. Some people really are just bad. And yes, people can do harmful things without being entirely defined by them. I often say that good and bad behavior isn't defined by the person. It's an inability to demonstrate empathy towards other human beings in that moment, which could be because they don't have that ability to demonstrate empathy. It could be they couldn't do it in that moment. They dehumanized the person for whatever reason. There is environmental, social factors, maybe biological factors that led to that. But yes, some people seem to act in horrific ways. But behavior can be challenged without labeling the whole person. Otherwise, there's no room for making amends. There's no room for being better. There's no room for rehabilitation. And maybe this feels like we're making excuses, but understanding isn't excusing. You can hold boundaries and seek to understand. If somebody cuts me off in traffic, I can still be curious about, I wonder what caused them to do that. I wonder what's going on in their world. Maybe they're panicking. Maybe they're anxious. Maybe something big's going on. Maybe they're having a really bad day. That doesn't mean I'm then going, and it's okay for put other people at road at risk. It's still bad driving. There may need to be consequences if they're doing it really badly and causing danger, or they may be lucky enough not to hurt anybody, but if they hurt somebody, they should definitely, then obviously there should be consequences. That doesn't mean I have to think them as a bad person, that they made a mistake or they behaved badly in that moment. I know sometimes people are coming from a positive place. Like if I'm turning up on shift and somebody's going to warn me about the challenging individual, or look out for such and such, or hey, this one's a troublemaker. Sometimes we're kind of like warning others about dangers, about what could be a threat. This is the nature of human behavior, that we notice a negative. Knowing patterns is different from locking people into fixed identity. Saying like, just be mindful of this. And patterns can change though. Identities can't if we keep cementing them. There's a principle, isn't there? If you treat a man as they are, they'll stay as they are. But if you treat them as they could be, they'll become what they should be. And I think that's so important, that sometimes I'll get staff warning me about the negatives about a person. And I sometimes try and turn around and go, and that's really appreciated. So what's their favorite subject? What do they love the most? What makes them laugh? What seems to be what would you say is their most positive quality? And trying to pull out the positives on a person. One, to remind the staff member that they're working with a human being who has flaws as well as positives. but also because I want the tools to go in with to connect, to build rapport, to direct them towards positive outcomes. And if I haven't understood them, all of them, and I'm only focused on the bad, then I've got little to no hope of making and promoting that change. So hopefully you found this useful. This week's pick one person. Think about it. One person you've already labeled in your head. Maybe a part of a friend group, part of a community, one of them, the mums at school that does the pickup. You've already labeled in your head as nasty or difficult or hard work or whatever it is. But actively look for evidence that changes that label. Maybe she's really difficult. Let's say the mum at the school gates who's a bit rude and a bit bolshy. But do you know what? When she greets her children, she does it with love. Maybe there's something that you can relate to in that behavior. Maybe they let somebody out them in front of traffic. Or maybe they're having a really bad day. They've got a really stressful job. Maybe they have to act that way at work to be able to, or feel that they're able to survive or be able to kind of thrive within their workplace. And unfortunately, that sometimes spills over into other areas of their life. We'll go back further. Why do they think that's an okay way to treat people? How have they been treated in their past? How were they raised to feel that that was an okay way to interact with other human beings? It means they're not bad. They've just learned bad behaviors. We can see past them. Maybe we could teach them new ones. Maybe we could kill them with kindness. Use that positivity and share it and teach them they don't have to act that way around others. So ask one question that gets to the why behind their behavior. Become curious. Lose that frustration. Become fascinated. You might be surprised what you find out. So here in your care has been cast as the bad one. And what would happen if you swap judgment for curiosity for just 1 week?